age.
They forced her to marry him to pay her father's debts, a 40-year-old man she'd never met, whose name made grown men flinch. Isolde Lee cried through the entire ceremony, convinced her life was over, telling anyone who'd listen that a man his age couldn't possibly satisfy her. She was 23. He was twice her age. But when Kang Min-ho finally cornered her in their penthouse that night, his voice was deadly calm. "I heard what you said about me before the wedding, and I'm going to spend however long it takes proving you wrong." She thought he meant it as a threat, but when rival gangs put a bullet in her shoulder 3 weeks later and he went to war for her, she realized the truth was so much more terrifying. He'd fallen completely, obsessively, dangerously in love. Welcome to K-fairytales Stories Besties. Please like, share, and subscribe. The ceremony was torture. Isolde's father sat in a wheelchair at the front, his terminal illness the reason she was here at all. His gambling debts to Min-ho's organization had been forgiven in exchange for one thing: her, a proper bride from a good family to legitimize Min-ho's transition from underground king to respected businessman. She'd agreed to save her father's life. She'd never agreed to want it. Min-ho watched her walk down the aisle with her head high and her eyes wet. She was beautiful in a way that made his chest hurt. Curves that filled out the wedding dress like sin wrapped in white silk. Dark hair pinned up to reveal a graceful neck. Skin like warm honey. And an expression that said she was walking to her execution, not her wedding. When she reached him, she didn't meet his eyes. He took her cold hand anyway. The vows were traditional Korean, then English. She stumbled through both. When the officiant said he could kiss his bride, Min-ho leaned down and pressed his lips to her forehead instead of her mouth. Gentle, chaste, giving her the only mercy he could in this moment. He felt her shudder beneath his touch. The reception passed in a blur of speeches and forced smiles. Isolde sat beside Min-ho at the head table, her hand trapped beneath his on the white tablecloth. His grip was firm but not painful, possessive but not cruel. Every time she tried to pull away, his fingers would tighten just slightly, a silent reminder that she was his now, whether she wanted to be or not. She barely ate. He noticed everything. The way she flinched when his business associates congratulated him. The way her breath hitched when his thumbs stroked across her knuckles. The way she looked at the exit like a trapped animal calculating escape routes. Later that evening, they left for his penthouse in Gangnam. The car ride was silent except for the city sounds filtering through bulletproof glass. Isolde pressed herself against the door as far from Min-ho as the back seat allowed. He let her, for now. His driver kept his eyes forward. His security detail followed in 2 additional vehicles. Everything about his life was controlled, calculated, protected, including her now. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of one of Seoul's most exclusive buildings. The interior was all clean lines and expensive minimalism. Black, white, chrome, not a single personal touch anywhere. It looked like a hotel, Isolde thought, like no one actually lived here. Min-ho removed his suit jacket and draped it over a chair, loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves. She stood frozen by the door, still in her wedding dress, still looking for exits. "Would you like something to drink?" His voice was deep, accented, careful, like he was talking to something wild that might bolt. She shook her head, didn't trust her voice. He poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey anyway, drank it in one swallow, then he turned to face her fully. "I heard what you said to your friend before the ceremony." Isolde's blood turned to ice. Her eyes finally met his, dark eyes, penetrating, seeing too much. "I don't know what you mean," she whispered. "Yes, you do." He set the glass down, walked toward her with slow, measured steps. "You said a man my age probably couldn't make you scream in bed, that I was too old to make you feel anything, that our wedding night would be disappointing at best, disgusting at worst." She wanted to die, wanted the marble floor to open up and swallow her whole. Heat flooded her face, her neck, her chest. "I'm sorry. I was upset. I didn't mean." "Didn't you?" He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive and masculine that made her stomach flip. "You were telling the truth as you believed it. I respect honesty, Isolde, even when it's insulting." She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. His presence overwhelmed everything. "I shouldn't have said those things. No, you should have said them to my face." His hand came up slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers traced the line of her jaw. The touch was feather-light, devastating. "But now I know what you think of me, and I'm going to spend however long it takes proving you wrong." "I don't understand." Her voice came out breathy, uncertain. "You will." His thumb brushed across her lower lip. "Take off the dress, get comfortable. We're not doing anything tonight except sleeping. You've had a long day, and I'm not the monster you think I am, but Isolde." His eyes darkened, voice dropping lower. "Eventually, you're going to beg me to make you scream, and when you do, I'll remind you of this conversation." He stepped back, left her standing there trembling and confused, walked to the master bedroom and returned with one of his shirts. Plain white cotton, expensive thread count. "Bathroom is through there. Take your time." Then he was gone, disappearing into what she assumed was a home office, leaving her alone with racing thoughts and a body that suddenly felt too hot, too tight, too aware of him. The next morning, Isolde woke in the master bed alone. She sat up slowly, disoriented. The shirt Minho had given her fell off one shoulder. Sunlight streamed through windows she'd been too exhausted to close. She'd expected him to join her last night. Had lain awake for hours, tense and anxious, waiting for him to claim his husbandly rights. But he never came. She'd fallen asleep sometime after 3, emotionally drained and more confused than ever. The smell of coffee drew her out of the bedroom. She found Minho in the kitchen, already dressed in another immaculate suit, reading something on his tablet. He looked up when she entered. His eyes tracked over her, taking in his shirt on her body, her bare legs, her sleep-mussed hair. Something heated flickered in his gaze before he controlled it. "Good morning. Coffee." "Please." She slid onto a bar stool, acutely aware that she was wearing nothing but his shirt and her underwear. He poured her a cup, black like his. She normally took cream and sugar but didn't ask for it. "Did you sleep well?" The question was polite. His tone was careful, but his eyes kept drifting to where his shirt gaped at her neck. "Eventually, you didn't come to bed." "No, I slept in the guest room." He set his tablet aside. "I meant what I said last night. We're not doing anything until you're ready. This marriage might be arranged, but I'm not going to force you into my bed like some kind of barbarian." Isolde's hands wrapped around the warm mug. "Then why marry me at all, if you're just going to treat me like a roommate? Because your father owed me money he couldn't pay. Because my family has been pressuring me to marry for years. Because you're beautiful and intelligent and exactly the kind of wife that will help me transition into legitimate business." His bluntness was almost refreshing. "And because the moment I saw your picture, I wanted you. Not just physically. I wanted to know who you were. What made you laugh? What scared you? What you dreamed about when no one was watching." She stared at him. "You don't even know me." "Not yet, but I will. We have time, Isolde, all the time in the world." He checked his watch. Expensive, Swiss. "I have meetings all day. My driver will take you wherever you want to go. Shopping, your father's hospital, anywhere. Just take security with you." "I'm a prisoner. You're my wife, and my enemies would love to use you against me. The security isn't negotiable." He stood, buttoned his jacket, walked around the island until he was standing beside her. His hand cupped her face, tilting it up toward him. "I know you don't want this marriage. I know you think I'm too old, too cold, too criminal, but you're mine now, and I protect what's mine." Then he kissed her, not the chaste forehead kiss from yesterday. This was real. His mouth covered hers with controlled passion, tasting her, claiming her, making a promise his body was already aching to keep. When he pulled back, she was breathless, lips parted, eyes wide. He smiled. It was predatory and satisfied. "I'll see you tonight." By the end of the week, Isolde had developed a routine. Minho left early for work. She spent mornings visiting her father at the hospital, afternoons exploring Seoul with her ever-present security detail, evenings pretending she wasn't hyper-aware of every move Minho made. They had dinner together every night, talked about surface things. He asked about her day. She asked about his. They were painfully polite. And beneath it all, tension built like a storm waiting to break. She noticed things about him. The way he always poured her coffee first. How he'd started keeping her favorite yogurt in the refrigerator even though she'd never told him what it was. The way his eyes followed her when he thought she wasn't looking. Hungry, patient, waiting for something she didn't understand. And she noticed how her body responded to him despite her mind's resistance. How her breath would catch when he touched her casually. How she'd started wearing his shirts to sleep even though her own pajamas had been moved into the closet. How she'd lie awake listening for his footsteps, disappointed when they never came to her door. One evening, they attended a charity gala. Minho's hand stayed possessively at the small of her back as they moved through the crowd. She wore a dress he'd delivered that afternoon. Emerald silk that hugged every curve and made her feel beautiful and exposed in equal measure. Other women watched him with obvious interest. Other men watched her with appreciation that turned to fear when they noticed Minho's expression. He introduced her to everyone as my wife, with a proprietary pride that made her shiver. A man approached while Minho was talking business with a city councilman. Young, handsome, clearly interested. "You must be the new Mrs. Kang. I'm David Choi. We went to university together." He offered his hand, smiled too warmly. "I have to say Minho is a lucky man." Isolde shook his hand politely. "It's nice to meet you." "You know," David leaned closer, voice dropping, "if you ever get tired of married life, I'd love to show you around Seoul properly. Without the security detail and the reputation." "She won't." Minho's voice cut between them like a blade. His hand closed around Isolde's wrist, pulling her firmly against his side. The possessiveness in the gesture was unmistakable. "And if you ever speak to my wife again without my explicit permission, David, I'll make sure you spend the rest of your career wondering why every business deal falls through at the last moment." David paled, bowed, disappeared into the crowd. Minho's grip on her wrist was just shy of painful. She could feel his pulse racing against her skin, feel the barely leashed violence in every line of his body. "Minho, you're hurting me." He released her immediately, stepped back. His jaw was clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. "We're leaving." The car ride home was silent and charged. Minho stared out the window, hands fisted on his thighs. Isolde watched him, confused by the intensity of his reaction. When they reached the penthouse, he went straight to his office and closed the door. She stood in the living room, uncertain. After 20 minutes, she knocked softly. "Come in." His voice was rough. He sat behind his desk, tie loosened, hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. A glass of whiskey sat half empty beside his laptop. He looked up when she entered, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole her breath. "I apologize for my behavior. It was inappropriate. He was flirting with me." "Yes, and it made you angry." Furious, he stood, walked around the desk. "Do you know what it's like to watch another man look at you like he has any right? To hear him suggest taking you away from me? To imagine his hands on you when mine haven't been?" He stopped in front of her. "You've been my wife for a week. We sleep in separate rooms. I haven't touched you beyond casual contact, and I'm losing my mind." "Then why don't you?" The words came out before she could stop them. "Why do you keep staying away? Because you're not ready, because you still flinch when I get too close, because you think I'm too old to make you want me." His hand cupped her face, thumb stroking her cheekbone. "But I'm not a patient man by nature, Isolde, and you're testing limits I didn't know I had." "I don't flinch anymore." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Don't you?" His other hand settled on her waist, pulling her closer. "Then prove it. Tell me to stop." He backed her against the wall, his body pressing along the length of hers. "Tell me you don't want this." She couldn't. Her hands came up to his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath expensive fabric. "Minho." "Say it," he murmured against her neck. "Say you don't want me and I'll walk away. I'll keep sleeping in the guest room. I'll keep my distance. Just say the words." But she couldn't say them, because they'd be a lie. Somewhere between his careful courtship and controlled patience, between his possessiveness and his protection, she'd started wanting him. Started noticing the way his suits fit his body. Started imagining what his hands would feel like without the careful restraint. Started wondering if maybe 40 wasn't too old after all. "I can't," she breathed. His mouth crashed down on hers. This wasn't the controlled kiss from before. This was hunger unleashed, need given permission, patience finally snapping. His hands tangled in her hair, angling her head for deeper access. She gasped against his mouth and he took advantage, tasting her, claiming her, making up for a week of denial in 30 seconds of devastating kisses. When he pulled back, they were both breathing hard. His forehead rested against hers. "Bedroom, now. Unless you want me to take you against this wall." She nodded, incapable of words. He swept her up, carrying her through the penthouse like she weighed nothing. The master bedroom was dark except for city lights filtering through windows. He set her down beside the bed, hands immediately finding the zipper of her dress. "If you want me to stop, say so now, because once this starts, I'm not stopping until you're screaming my name." "Don't stop." She reached for his tie, fumbling with the knot. "Please don't stop." He helped her, shedding clothes with efficient desperation. When they were skin to skin, he paused, just looking at her, taking in every curve, every inch of her body laid bare before him. "You're perfect," he murmured. "Absolutely perfect." Then he was lowering her to the bed, following her down, his weight pressing her into expensive sheets. His mouth found hers again as his hands mapped territory he'd been imagining for weeks. She arched into his touch, gasping, trembling, overwhelmed by sensation. He was patient even in passion, taking his time, learning what made her moan, what made her writhe, building heat between them until she thought she might combust. When he finally joined their bodies, the stretch, the fullness, the absolute rightness of it stole the breath from her lungs. He held still, giving her time to adjust, his control visibly fraying. "Okay," he gritted out. "Yes, God, yes. Move, please move." He did. Slow at first, then faster as she urged him on with hands and voice and the arch of her hips. The bed frame knocked against the wall. She didn't care. He was everywhere, surrounding her, inside her, consuming her completely. And when the pleasure finally crested, when she came apart beneath him with a cry that was definitely a scream, he buried his face in her neck and followed her over with a groan that sounded like prayer. After they lay tangled together, sweat-slicked and breathing hard, his hand stroked lazy patterns on her hip. Her fingers traced the muscles of his back. "Still think I'm too old?" His voice held quiet amusement. She hit his shoulder weakly. "Shut up," he laughed, actually laughed. The sound was rusty, like he didn't do it often. "You did scream, just so we're clear on that." "Minho, very loudly actually. I'm fairly certain my security detail heard you." "Oh my God." She buried her face in his chest, mortified. He tilted her face up, suddenly serious. "Don't be embarrassed. Do you know how long I've wanted this? How many nights I laid in that guest room, hard and aching, imagining what you'd sound like. You're mine, Isolde. I want everyone to know it." Something warm bloomed in her chest. Dangerous. Terrifying. "This doesn't change anything. We're still strangers who were forced into marriage. No, we're husband and wife who just made love. There's a difference." He kissed her forehead. "And I'm going to spend every day proving to you that this can be real, that we can be real." The following morning, Isolde woke alone again. Panic seized her chest. She'd given him everything last night, been vulnerable and open and completely his, and he'd left, just like she'd feared, just like she'd always feared. She grabbed his shirt from the floor, pulled it on, and went searching for him. Found him in the kitchen making breakfast. Actual breakfast. Eggs, toast, fruit arranged on plates. He looked up when she entered, saw her expression, and immediately understood. "Hey," he crossed to her in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms. "I'm here, I didn't leave. I was just making you breakfast because you barely ate last night and I wanted to take care of you." His hand stroked her hair. "Where did you think I went?" "I don't know, away, somewhere I couldn't follow." Her voice was small, muffled against his chest. "You gave yourself to me and I thought maybe you regretted it." "Never." He tilted her face up, making her look at him. "Listen to me very carefully. Last night was not a transaction, not a conquest, not something I'll take and then discard. You're my wife, I'm keeping you. Forever. No matter what happens, no matter what you do, you're stuck with me now. Understand?" She nodded, blinking back tears she didn't fully understand. By the end of the month, they'd fallen into a new rhythm. One that included shared mornings, stolen kisses, and nights that left them both satisfied and breathless. Isolde started to understand why Minho's reputation was so fearsome. He was ruthless in business, cold to his enemies, and absolutely unforgiving when crossed. But with her, he was different. Gentle, attentive, passionate in ways that left her shaking. She was falling for him. It terrified her. Because she'd learned early that loving someone gave them power to destroy you. And Minho already had too much power over her body. She couldn't give him her heart, too. One afternoon, she met her university friend Melissa for lunch. They sat at a cafe in Gangnam, security at a discreet distance. Melissa stared at her with wide eyes. "You're glowing. Marriage agrees with you. It's complicated." Isolde sipped her tea, trying to find words. "But yes, it's better than I expected." Better than marrying a 40-year-old criminal overlord who forced you down the aisle. That's a low bar, Isolde. Melissa's concern was genuine. Are you happy, actually happy, or just making the best of a bad situation? Before Isolde could answer, a man approached their table. Tall, handsome, Western. Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but you're the most beautiful woman I've seen since arriving in Seoul. Can I buy you a drink? Isolde opened her mouth to refuse politely. Then she felt it, the weight of a gaze. She turned and saw Min-ho across the street, frozen mid-step outside a building, his expression absolutely murderous. He'd been walking to a meeting, had seen her through the cafe windows, and had witnessed this stranger hitting on his wife. Their eyes locked. Even from this distance, she could see the barely leashed violence in every line of his body. The man followed her gaze, saw Min-ho, paled. I think I have the wrong person. Sorry. He fled. Min-ho crossed the street with purpose. His security moved to intercept, but he waved them off. When he reached their table, his hand went immediately to Isolde's shoulder, possessive, claiming. Having lunch? His voice was deceptively calm. Yes, Min-ho, this is Melissa from university. Melissa, my husband. The word husband came out naturally now. It's nice to meet you, Melissa said carefully. We've heard a lot about you. All good things, I hope. His hand was still on Isolde's shoulder. His thumb stroked her neck in a gesture that was both tender and territorial. I should get to my meeting. Isolde, I'll see you at home tonight. He leaned down and kissed her, not chaste, deep and thorough and making a statement for anyone watching. When he pulled back, she was flushed and breathless. After he left, Melissa stared. Okay, so that's what you're working with. I take back everything I said. That man is completely obsessed with you. He's possessive. No, honey, he's in love. There's a difference. That night, Min-ho was waiting when she got home. He stood by the windows, tie loosened, drink in hand. She could feel the tension radiating off him. Did you enjoy your lunch? Yes, why? A man hit on you in public while wearing my ring. His voice was tight with barely controlled emotion. It made me want to tear him apart with my bare hands. She set her bag down carefully. You can't murder everyone who looks at me, Min-ho. Watch me. He turned to face her fully. You don't understand what you do to me, how insane you make me. Before you, I was controlled, rational. Now I'm one inappropriate glance away from starting a war because someone dared to smile at my wife. That's not healthy. I don't care. He crossed to her, pulling her against him roughly. You're mine, mine to protect, mine to cherish, mine to worship every night until we're both too exhausted to move. And I will not apologize for wanting to destroy anyone who threatens that. Min-ho, say you're mine. His hands framed her face, intense and desperate. Say it, Isolde, please. I'm yours. The words came out whispered but certain. Only yours. He kissed her like he was dying and she was air, like she was the only thing keeping him sane in a world built on violence and control. And she kissed him back with equal fervor, finally understanding what Melissa had seen. This wasn't just possession. It was devotion. It was love. And it was completely consuming them both. A few days later, everything shattered. Isolde was shopping in Myeongdong with her security when it happened. One moment she was looking at scarves. The next, there was a scream, gunfire, and her security was shoving her toward an exit. She ran. Behind her, chaos erupted. More shots, people screaming, her guard yelling into his radio. Then pain exploded in her shoulder and she was falling, the world tilting sideways. She hit the ground hard. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Blood spread warm and wet across her blouse. Someone had shot her. Someone had actually shot her. Her guard was there immediately, returning fire, shielding her body with his. More security arrived. An ambulance. Everything blurred together. She heard someone say rival gang and message, and the boss will be furious. Then darkness took her. She woke in a hospital, private room, expensive. Her shoulder throbbed with pain that even morphine couldn't quite touch. And Min-ho sat beside her bed, still in his suit from work, looking like death itself. His eyes were red. His hands shook where they gripped hers. You're awake! His voice broke. Thank God you're awake. What happened? Her throat was raw. Nakamura's people, rival organization. They shot you to send me a message. Rage and anguish warred in his expression. You almost died, Isolde, on the operating table. Your heart stopped for 43 seconds. I counted every single one. I'm sorry. You're sorry. He laughed, bitter and broken. This is my fault. My life, my enemies, my choices. You got hurt because of me, because I was selfish enough to marry you, to make you a target, to drag you into this world. Tears tracked down his face. I should have left you alone. Min-ho, no. I'm going to fix this. He stood abruptly. I'm going to end this war, and then I'm going to make sure you're never in danger again, even if that means letting you go. Don't you dare. She tried to sit up, gasped at the pain. Don't you dare use this as an excuse to push me away. You almost died. His voice rose, cracking with emotion. Do you understand that? I almost lost you before I even got to keep you. I almost... He couldn't finish. Just stood there, this powerful, dangerous man, completely destroyed by the thought of losing her. But you didn't lose me. I'm here, I'm alive, and I'm not going anywhere. She reached for him with her good arm. Come here, please. He came, collapsing to his knees beside the bed, his head resting against her hip. She stroked his hair with trembling fingers. This isn't your fault, it's theirs, and we'll face it together. I can't lose you. His words were muffled against her hospital gown. I can't, you're everything, everything good in my life, everything worth protecting if something happened to you. It didn't, I'm right here. She made him look at her. I love you, do you hear me? I love you, Min-ho, your age, your past, your world. None of it matters, I love you anyway. His eyes went wide. Say it again. I love you. Again. I love you. She pulled him up, kissed him despite the pain. I love you, I'm yours, and you're not getting rid of me that easily. He kissed her back desperately, carefully, mindful of her injury but unable to hold back his relief, his love, his absolute devotion. When they broke apart, he pressed his forehead to hers. I love you too, so much it scares me, so much I'd burn the world down to keep you safe. Then burn it. Her voice was fierce despite her weakness. Do whatever you need to do, end this war, protect us, and then come home to me. His smile was savage and beautiful. Yes, ma'am. The war Min-ho waged was brutal and absolute. Isolde stayed in the hospital for a week, healing under armed guard, while her husband systematically dismantled the Nakamura organization piece by piece. She heard about it through whispered conversations between security. How Min-ho had walked into their territory alone and demanded a meeting. How he'd given them 24 hours to surrender the man who'd ordered the hit on his wife. How, when they'd refused, he'd unleashed hell. By the time Isolde was released, 3 of Nakamura's top lieutenants were dead, their warehouses were burned to ash, and their leader had fled Seoul entirely. Min-ho's message had been received loud and clear. Touch his wife, and there was nowhere in the world safe enough to hide. He came to take her home himself, dismissing the wheelchair the nurse offered and carrying Isolde out of the hospital personally despite her protests that she could walk. I need to feel you in my arms, he murmured against her hair. I need to know you're real and safe and mine. His penthouse had changed. Security had tripled. Bulletproof glass had been installed on every window. There were panic rooms on each floor and guards stationed at every entrance. It looked like a fortress now, because that's what it had become. A fortress built to protect the only thing Min-ho truly cared about. That first night home, he helped her into the shower, carefully unwrapping the waterproof bandage on her shoulder. His hands were gentle as they washed her hair, as they soaped her body with reverent touches that had nothing to do with desire and everything to do with gratitude that she was alive. When he lifted her out and wrapped her in a towel, she saw tears on his face again. I thought I'd lost you, he whispered. When they called me, when they said you'd been shot, I thought my world had ended. I'm here. She cupped his face, made him look at her. I'm here and I'm not leaving you, not ever. He carried her to bed and held her all night, his arms wrapped protectively around her, his face buried in her neck. She felt him trembling. This man who controlled an empire, who commanded respect through fear, was falling apart because she'd been hurt. And she realized that Melissa had been right. This wasn't just possession or obsession. This was love. Complete, consuming, world-ending love. The next morning, Isolde woke to find Min-ho already dressed in a black suit, checking his gun with practiced efficiency. Where are you going? Her voice was thick with sleep and concern. To finish this, Nakamura is still alive, still a threat. That ends today. He holstered the weapon, came to sit beside her on the bed. I need you to promise me something. What? If something happens to me, if I don't come back, there's a safe in my office. The combination is your birthday. Inside is everything you need. Money, documents, contacts. Promise me you'll use it. Promise me you'll be smart and survive. Fear clawed at her chest. Nothing is going to happen to you. Promise me anyway. His eyes were intense, desperate. Please, Isolde, I need to know you'll be okay without me. I won't be okay without you. Her voice broke. How could I be? You're everything. You're my husband, my love, my whole world. If you die, part of me dies too. His expression softened. Then I guess I better not die. He kissed her deeply. I love you, remember that. Whatever happens today, remember that I love you more than I've ever loved anything in my life. Then he was gone, and Isolde sat in their bed, terrified and helpless, waiting for news that would either save her or destroy her. The hours passed like years. She tried to eat, couldn't, tried to rest, couldn't, just paced the penthouse like a caged animal, her shoulder throbbing with each step, her heart racing with fear. Minho's head of security, a man named Sung, stayed with her. He didn't offer empty reassurances, just stood guard and periodically checked his phone. Finally, at 6 p.m, Sung's phone rang. He answered in rapid Korean, his expression unreadable. Then he lowered the phone and looked at Isolde. It's over. The boss won. Nakamura is dead. Minho is on his way home. Relief hit her so hard she nearly collapsed. Sung caught her arm, steadied her. Thank you, she gasped. Thank you for telling me. He fought like a demon, Sung said quietly. I've worked for him for 15 years, never seen him like that. He was unstoppable, all because of you. When Minho walked through the door an hour later, he looked like he'd been through war. His suit was torn and blood-stained. His knuckles were split open. There was a cut above his eyebrow that would definitely scar, but he was alive. He was home, and Isolde threw herself into his arms despite her injury, despite the pain, despite everything. He caught her carefully, mindful of her shoulder, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. It's over, he murmured. You're safe now, I made sure of it. I don't care about safe. She pulled back to look at him. I just care that you came home to me. He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of everything they'd almost lost. When they broke apart, she saw something in his eyes, something vulnerable and terrified and hopeful all at once. Marry me again, he said. What? I know we're already married, but that was arranged, forced, built on debt and obligation. He took her hands in his bloody ones. I want to marry you again, a real wedding, with our friends, with your father well enough to walk you down the aisle, with vows we choose ourselves, with you saying yes because you want to, not because you have to. Tears streamed down her face. Yes, God, yes, I'll marry you 1,000 times if you want. He laughed, the sound relieved and joyful. Once more will do. He pulled a box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, not the one he'd given her at their first wedding. This one was different. A large diamond surrounded by smaller stones in a setting that looked antique and precious. This was my grandmother's, he said quietly. She was the only person in my family who ever truly loved me, who saw me as more than a weapon or a tool. I want you to have it, want you to wear it, want everyone to know that you're mine by choice now, not by force. She let him slide it onto her finger next to her wedding band. It fit perfectly. It's beautiful. You're beautiful. He stood, wincing slightly. I need to clean up, get these wounds treated, and then I need to make love to my wife and reassure myself that we both survived this nightmare. She smiled through her tears. I'll help you. In the bathroom, she carefully cleaned his cuts while he sat on the counter and watched her with dark, intense eyes. You should have seen me today, he said quietly. The things I did, the violence, the blood, you would have been terrified. I already know what you're capable of. She replied, dabbing antiseptic on his knuckles. It doesn't change how I feel about you. How can you love me, knowing what I am, what I do? Because beneath all of that, you're the man who makes me coffee every morning, who carries me when I'm hurt, who cried when he thought he'd lost me. She met his eyes. You're not just a criminal, Minho. You're my husband, my protector, my love, and I choose you, every dark, violent, possessive part of you. He pulled her between his legs, kissed her with a gentleness that contradicted every terrible thing he'd done that day. I don't deserve you. Too bad. You're stuck with me anyway. That night, they made love slowly, carefully, mindful of their injuries but desperate to feel alive, to feel connected, to prove they'd both survived. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Minho spoke into the darkness. I'm leaving the criminal world. Isolde lifted her head from his chest. What? Not immediately. These things take time, but I'm transitioning everything to legitimate business. Real estate, tech investments, consulting. It'll take a year, maybe 2, but I'm done. I won't risk you again, won't risk our future." His hand found her stomach, rested there meaningfully. "Won't risk our children." "Children?" her breath caught. "We haven't even talked about that." "I'm talking about it now. I want a family with you, Isolde. Want to fill this cold penthouse with laughter and chaos and tiny humans who have your smile and your strength." He kissed her forehead. "Want to be more than what I am. Want to be the man you deserve." "You already are." She snuggled closer, her heart so full it hurt. "But yes, let's have a family. Let's build something beautiful together." They fell asleep like that, planning a future that had seemed impossible just weeks ago. A future built on love instead of obligation, on choice instead of force, on the kind of devotion that burned so bright it could chase away even the darkest shadows. The following months passed in a blur of healing and happiness. Isolde's shoulder recovered fully. Minho systematically dismantled his criminal empire and rebuilt it as something legitimate. Her father's health improved enough that he was released from the hospital, and they planned a second wedding, a real one. This time, Isolde chose everything. The venue, an exclusive garden in Seoul that bloomed with cherry blossoms. The dress, a custom gown that made her look like a princess. The guest list, small and intimate, just the people who truly mattered. The night before the wedding, Minho broke tradition and stayed with her. They lay in bed together, his hand tracing lazy patterns on her hip. "Tomorrow I get to marry you again," he murmured. "Properly this time." Nervous, terrified. "What if you change your mind? What if you realize you're too good for me and run?" She laughed, the sound warm and affectionate. "Not a chance. You're stuck with me, old man." "Old man?" He rolled her beneath him, careful and playful. "I seem to remember making you scream just last night, multiple times. Want me to prove I'm not too old right now?" "Minho, we have an early start tomorrow." But he was already kissing down her body, already making her forget every objection, already proving that age was just a number and he would spend the rest of their lives worshipping her completely. The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful. Isolde stood in the bridal suite with Melissa helping her into the dress. "You look happy," Melissa observed, adjusting the veil. "Genuinely, radiantly happy." "I am." Isolde touched her stomach where a secret had started to grow. She'd taken a test that morning. Hadn't told Minho yet, was saving it for after the ceremony. "I really, really am." Her father walked her down the aisle with tears in his eyes. He looked healthier than he had in months, the weight of debt and worry finally lifted from his shoulders. "I'm sorry," he whispered as they walked. "For everything, for forcing you into this, for the choices I made." "Don't be," she squeezed his arm. "Those choices led me to him, led me to love. I wouldn't change any of it." Minho stood at the altar in a black tux that made him look devastating. When he saw her, his expression cracked open. Pure love, pure devotion, pure happiness. She walked toward him with her heart in her throat, overwhelmed by the rightness of this moment. When she reached him, he took both her hands. "You're so beautiful," he murmured. "So perfect." The officiant began the ceremony, but Isolde barely heard it. She was too focused on Minho. On the way he looked at her like she hung the moon. On the way his thumbs stroked over her knuckles. On the way his eyes were suspiciously wet. When it came time for vows, Minho spoke first. "Isolde, when I first married you, it was a business transaction. I needed a wife. You needed to save your father. We were strangers bound by circumstance." He took a breath. "But somewhere between that forced beginning and today, you became my everything. You taught me what love feels like, what it means to have someone worth protecting, worth living for, worth being better for. You survived my world, survived my enemies, and somehow still chose to love me. Today I vow to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of that choice. I vow to cherish you, protect you, worship you, and love you with everything I am. You're my wife, my partner, my whole world. And I will never take that for granted again." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Isolde took a shaky breath, trying to compose herself enough to speak. "Minho, when we first met, I thought you were everything I should fear. Too old, too dangerous, too controlled. I cried through our first wedding because I thought my life was over." She smiled through her tears. "But I was wrong. My life was just beginning. You've given me safety when I felt vulnerable. Passion when I thought I'd never feel desired. Love when I believed I'd never be worthy of it. You've proven that age is meaningless when hearts connect. That arranged marriages can become real love. That even the most feared man can be gentle with the right person." She squeezed his hands. "Today I vow to stand beside you always. In your business, in your life, in every challenge we face, I vow to love you through everything. The good, the bad, the dangerous, and the beautiful. You're my husband by choice now, my love by destiny, and I'm never letting you go." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife again, Minho kissed her like it was the first time, deep and passionate and full of promise. The garden erupted in applause. At the reception, during dinner, Isolde stood to make a speech. Minho looked at her curiously. She never mentioned wanting to say anything. "I know this is unconventional," she began, her hand finding his shoulder. "But I have something to tell my husband, something that couldn't wait." Minho's brows furrowed. "Isolde." She pulled a small wrapped box from beneath her bouquet, handed it to him with shaking hands. "Open it." He did, carefully. Inside was the positive pregnancy test she'd taken that morning. For 3 seconds he just stared, then his head snapped up, eyes wide. "You're pregnant about 6 weeks. I found out this morning." Tears streamed down her face. Surprise. Minho stood so fast his chair fell backward. He pulled her into his arms, lifted her off her feet, spun her around despite her laughing protests. When he set her down, he was crying openly. "We're having a baby. We're having a baby." He dropped to his knees right there in front of everyone, pressed his face to her stomach, his hands spanning her waist. "I love you," he whispered. "Both of you, so much." The reception turned into a celebration of not just their marriage, but their growing family. Minho couldn't stop touching her. His hand would drift to her stomach constantly, protectively, reverently. When they finally left for their honeymoon, a week in Jeju Island, he carried her over the threshold of their hotel's suite and straight to the bed. "I need to make love to my wife," he murmured against her neck. "My pregnant, beautiful, perfect wife. We just did this last night, and we'll do it every night for the rest of our lives." He kissed her deeply. "I'll never get enough of you, Isolde. Never stop wanting you, never stop needing you." They made love slowly, tenderly, with him whispering words of love and devotion against her skin. When they finished, he held her close, his hand protective over where their baby grew. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for choosing me, for loving me, for giving me a family I never thought I'd have." "Thank you for proving me wrong," she replied. "About everything, about age, about arranged marriages, about love." "I told you I'd make you scream." His voice held quiet amusement. "And you did, multiple times, very enthusiastically, if I recall." She hit his chest weakly. "You're never going to let me live that down, are you?" "Never. It's going to be my favorite story to tell our children, how their mother thought their father was too old to make her happy." "Minho." "What? It's romantic. Girl forced to marry older man. Girl thinks he's too old. Man proves her spectacularly wrong. Man and girl fall in love. Man and girl make baby. It's a fairy tale." "It's insane. It's ours." He kissed her forehead. "And I wouldn't change a single thing." 7 months later, Isolde gave birth to a daughter. Minho held her through every contraction, whispered encouragement through every push, and cried when their baby girl entered the world screaming her displeasure. "She has your lungs," he observed, tears streaming down his face as he held his daughter for the first time. "And your stubbornness, probably." They named her Jaiwoo. It meant wisdom and beautiful. She was perfect, tiny and wrinkled and absolutely perfect. Minho was completely besotted, terrified to put her down, constantly checking that she was breathing. "I've faced down-armed enemies," he muttered, staring at his sleeping daughter in her bassinet. "Negotiated with dangerous men, built an empire, but this tiny human terrifies me." "Because you love her," Isolde said from the hospital bed, watching him with soft eyes. "Because she's ours and precious and you'd destroy the world to keep her safe." "Damn right I would." He carefully lifted Jaiwoo, brought her to Isolde. "She's going to have everything, everything we didn't have. Love, safety, parents who choose each other every day." "She already does." Isolde took their daughter, held her close. "She has us." Minho sat on the edge of the bed, wrapped his arms around both of them. His family, his world, everything that mattered. And he made a silent vow to that tiny baby, to protect her, to love her, to be the father she deserved. To build a life so good, so safe, so full of love that she'd never know the darkness he'd come from. 6 months after Jaiwoo's birth, they moved out of the penthouse, into a house, an actual house with a yard and multiple bedrooms and space for a child to grow. It was in an exclusive neighborhood with excellent security, but it felt like a home instead of a fortress. Minho's transition to legitimate business was complete. He now ran a consulting firm that helped companies navigate international markets. It was legal, profitable, and boring compared to his old life. He'd never been happier. One evening, Isolde found him in Jaiwoo's nursery, watching their daughter sleep. She came up behind him, wrapped her arms around his waist. "Penny, for your thoughts? Just thinking about how different my life is now, how different I am." He turned in her arms. "A year ago, I was a criminal, feared, dangerous, alone. Now I'm a husband, a father, a legitimate businessman, and I'm happier than I ever thought possible." "No regrets, only that I didn't find you sooner." He kissed her softly. "But I'm grateful for every moment we have. Every morning I wake up next to you. Every time I hold our daughter. Every ordinary day that's extraordinary because you're in it." "I love you," Isolde whispered. "My impossible, wonderful, formerly dangerous husband. I love you too." He rested his forehead against hers. "My stubborn, beautiful, perfect wife who thought I was too old to make her happy. You proved me wrong about that." "I did, thoroughly and repeatedly." His smile was wicked. "Speaking of which, Jaiwoo's asleep. We should take advantage of that." "Minho, I just put her down." But he was already pulling her toward their bedroom, already kissing her, already proving that even after marriage, a baby, and domestic life, the passion between them still burned as bright as that first night. Years passed. Jaiwoo grew into a bright, precocious child who had her mother's stubbornness and her father's intensity. Minho's consulting firm flourished. They had 2 more children, twins, a boy and girl. The house was filled with laughter, chaos, and the kind of love that healed old wounds and built new futures. And through it all, Minho and Isolde chose each other, every single day. In the quiet moments and the chaotic ones, in the mundane and the extraordinary. One night, after putting all 3 children to bed, they sat on their back patio watching the sunset. Minho pulled Isolde into his lap, held her close. "Do you remember what you said before our first wedding? About me being too old to make you scream?" "Don't start. I'm just saying, 3 kids later, I think we've thoroughly disproven that theory." She laughed, the sound warm and happy. "You're never going to let me forget, are you?" "Never. It's my favorite origin story." He kissed her neck. "Besides, I still make you scream, just last night if I recall correctly. The kids are going to hear you. The kids are asleep." And soundproofing was the best investment we ever made. She turned in his lap, straddled him, kissed him deeply. "I love you, even when you're insufferable. I love you too, even when you're stubborn." His hands found her waist. "You know what I want." "What?" "Another baby." Isolde's eyes widened. "Minho, we have 3 children already. 3 very active, very demanding children." "I know, but I love watching you pregnant, love the glow you get, love feeling our baby move, love building our family." His voice softened. "Love you, always." She studied his face, saw the sincerity there, the love, the absolute devotion, and she felt her resolve weaken. "1 more, but that's it. 4 children is our limit. 4 is perfect." He stood, carrying her toward the house. "Let's start working on that right now." "Minho!" But she was laughing as he carried her inside, as he loved her thoroughly in the bedroom they'd shared for years, as they built toward a future that kept getting better and better. And when, months later, she took a test that showed positive again, when she told him they were expecting their 4th child, he reacted exactly as he had the first time. With tears, with joy, with absolute gratitude that she'd chosen him. Their family grew. Their love deepened. And the story that had started with tears, with fear, with a girl forced to marry a man she thought was too old, became the greatest love story either of them had ever known. Because sometimes the best love stories start with the worst circumstances. Sometimes arranged marriages become real love. Sometimes the person you're forced to be with becomes the person you can't live without. And sometimes a 40-year-old man can make a 23-year-old woman scream so loud the neighbors complain. Can make her fall so deeply in love she forgets why she ever resisted. Can prove that age is just a number when hearts connect and souls choose each other. Minho proved all of that and more, every single day, for the rest of their lives. And Isolde never regretted a single moment of their impossible, beautiful, perfect love story. Thank you for watching, besties. If you loved Minho and Isolde's journey from forced marriage to true love, please hit that like button. Share this story with friends who love dark romance and subscribe for more passionate, addictive stories. Drop a comment telling us your favorite moment. Was it when he first heard her insult? When he saved her? Their real wedding? Or the bobbies? We read every comment. See you in the next story.